Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. In this video, I want to relook at the Slav's farming rate bonus, which as you may or may not know, has had a few tweaks over time. About 3 years ago now, I did a comprehensive video for African kingdoms, looking at all of the civilizations' farming rates, and while many of those results still hold true for those civilizations today, for the Slavs, they do not. They, in particular, have significantly better farming now, which has done a lot to redefine the civilization's reputation from being kind of meh into an economic powerhouse. To start with, I thought I'd re-establish the baseline they had before Rise of the Rajas. Here I'm running patch 4.3, which is from 3 years back. Good old patch 4.3, from back in the days when Quick Match was temporarily disabled. Now, the Slav farming rate has always officially been stated that their farmers work 15% faster. In the past, that definitely wasn't the case though. A quick note is that for all these tests, I'm running at normal speed on HD for 5 minutes, so it's not including any time to build or reseed the farms. These are also subject to slight variability because of random walking choices made by the villagers, as well as how efficiently you placed your farms. An ideally placed farm would be faster and exaggerate the difference, while doubling them up would decrease the effect of the bonus. So keeping all that in mind, averaged over the 8 farmers for 5 minutes, these are the values I found. It shows about a 12% increase for wheelbarrow and a 7 to 8% increase for handcart. Farming tends to be where you notice the biggest improvements for your economy with both of those technologies. Next, I did the same test again, but this time with the Slavs. Before wheelbarrow, I found they ended up being about 9 to 10% better than the generic civilization. It's a bit short of the 15% that's advertised, but that might come down to the ambiguous wording of the bonus itself. The farmers may be collecting 15% faster when they actually stop to gather food, but that's only one step of the overall farming process, and when you factor in the time they're walking around the farm and dropping it off, you end up with something a bit lower. Next, after wheelbarrow, you again find an increase over the generic civilization, but this time it's only about 7%. There's no immediate explanation as for why that would be, since if anything, wheelbarrow should be helping the Slav bonus shine even more by speeding up the villagers' walking and decreasing the frequency of trips back to the town center. The next result will shed some light on what exactly is happening though. Once you research handcart, the improvement is nothing. That's right, Slav farms with handcart in patch 4.3 are the exact same as generic ones, and only about 1% better than Slav farmers with wheelbarrow. Essentially, handcart did nothing to the Slav farming rate. Again, this is all in patch 4.3 a few years ago. The simplest explanation here is that farmers are not allowed to gather faster than around the normal upper limit for generic civilizations of 24 food per minute. Other civilizations just happen to reach that limit after handcart instead of after wheelbarrow, whereas Slavs with their bonus were hitting that ceiling a bit sooner. Now, to be fair, that didn't automatically make it a terrible bonus. The boost to your early economy was still measurable, but just not quite as large as advertised, and by the end of a long game had disappeared entirely. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, what is the current state of Slav farming though? Let's switch over to the most current patch, 5.8, and see how things have changed. First of all, I'll re-establish the baseline for the generic civilizations. Running them again, they're pretty close to the previous numbers, though you can see a bit of variability that sneaks into the tests, so treat all these numbers as being plus or minus 0.1. Now that we have our baseline again, let's finally see how the most current version of the Slav farming bonus does. Right out of the gate, we can see it's a lot better. We're now looking at more like a 16% improvement. That shows a complete reinterpretation of the 15% faster rule, no longer being the villager's work rate when standing to farm, but significantly more than that to end up giving around 15% faster overall collection, including the walk time. There's a hint about this in the 5.7 patch notes, saying that the farm multiplier was changed from 1.31 to 1.28, which I interpret as saying that when the villager stops to farm, they're actually doing that part 28% faster than generic farmers. But what about after wheelbarrow? In previous versions, that's where we started to see a big drop-off to around a 7% improvement. It turns out there is no drop-off anymore. If anything, I found a slight uptick in efficiency, though that increase could just as easily be noise in the data. That now gives it more than double the effect size that the bonus had previously. Moving on to handcart, remember in the patch 4.3 tests, there was no effective handcart at all, as farming rates were capped at about 24 food per minute. It looks as if that cap has been lifted, as they're still farming consistently a little over 15% faster. It's safe to conclude the bonus really is working as intended. All of that is great news for Slav players. If you're going for scouts or knights early on, it's easy to see how that would translate into more units and upgrades. You also have to think about the improvement to your booming potential, with villagers being that much easier to keep consistently coming out of 3 or 4 town centers. For example, you can now keep a town center working at maximum capacity in Castle Age with just 5 farms per town center instead of the normal 6. Even in the really late game, it'll still have an impact by letting you get away with fewer farmers, translating into more military or trade units before you hit your population limit. Now there is one drawback that a pessimist might point out, which is that faster farming inherently means those farms go through wood faster. I just want to alleviate that fear in case you have it. Farming is an efficient way to turn your wood into food, starting out at roughly a 1:3 ratio and going up to about 1:9. The Slavs' extra food production translate to about 1 extra wood per farm per minute in Dark Age, and improves from there. Assuming you have 5 to 10 farms in Castle Age, you're looking at about that much in increased wood cost per minute. It turns out though that even a feudal age lumberjack can gather almost 30 wood per minute, meaning even just 1 extra villager on wood easily offsets the extra wood cost of the farms being used up more quickly in the mid-game. So that's a look at the Slavs' farming rate buff. This did happen over a year ago, but I know with my old video still up, it was putting some misleading information out there about the Slavs, so hopefully that clears things up a bit. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time.